Today's lesson is a snapshot of the camera's history. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And today we're going to be talking about photography, and more specifically, we're going to be talking about the history of the camera. If you don't have a camera, you can't be taking pictures and you cannot be a photographer. And so we're talking about the history of the camera. Most of us take the camera for granted. We all have smartphones that have a camera built into it. And if we want to take a picture of our food and post it on Instagram or whatever, it's really easy to do.
That's right. So I'm one of those people who take photos with their cameras, with their smartphone cameras. And I don't know a lot about taking photographs with a traditional camera. So before the smartphone came out, it was necessary to learn things like the exposure that a camera used or the aperture, focus, and all of that. And I was never able to learn that really well. So this article will be very useful to get an idea of what the traditional camera involved.
Yeah, but the concept is the same, even though the old cameras used film and the newer cameras use digital sensors. The idea is to capture an image and to have something exposed with light. And of course, they all have the same concepts of shutter speeds and apertures and filters and all that kind of stuff. So indeed, it's all very much related. And it's a good idea to learn a little bit about traditional photography, especially in terms of the cameras. So let's get to it. Let's have a snapshot of the history of the camera. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson right now.
A snapshot of the camera's history. Chances are you've taken a photograph of something in the past few days. Perhaps you snapped a photo of a delicious meal, a loved one, a pet, or something to help you remember a special event. Indeed, smartphones have made cameras so portable and commonplace that we now take for granted the ability to quickly and easily document our lives and experiences. But it's worth taking a moment to look back on the history of the camera so that we can better appreciate just how amazing this invention is.
大家好，第一部分我们可以看到单字 portable， 这个字是形容词，指的是轻便的或是可稀释的。例如 While on duty, the security guard listens to a portable radio to pass the time. 那名警卫执勤时都会听轻便的收音机来打发时间。或者 Kevin is going to bring a portable coffee maker on our camping trip. 我们去露营时 Kevin 将会带一台携带式咖啡机。接下来我们看到单字 commonplace， 这个字是形容词，指的是普遍的、常见的或是稀松平常的。例如Nowadays, it's commonplace for couples to not have kids. 现今夫妻没生小孩是很常见的事。或是 Owning a cell phone has become commonplace among children. 在小孩之间拥有手机是很普遍的事。再来，我们看到单字 invention， 这个字是名词，意思是发明物或是创造物。例如 The telephone is one of the most important inventions of all time. 电话是有史以来最重要的发明之一。或是 Kyle's invention was a robot that could paint houses. Kyle 的发明是一个可以为房子刷油漆的机器人。
So before we get to the first part of today's lesson, let's look at the title. It says, a snapshot of the camera's history. So the word snapshot here refers to a picture. It means the same thing as a picture. So when you snap the camera takes a shot. So a snapshot is a picture. When you use snapshot figuratively to talk about, let's say, something that happened in the past or a person's biography, then you're saying that you're just showing a general image of that subject. You're not going into detail. So it's a snapshot of the actor's life. It's a snapshot of the camera's history. So here in the first sentence, it says, chances are you've taken a photograph of something in the past few days. Chances are means that something is likely to happen or something likely happened. In other words, it's likely that you've taken a photo of something in the past few days.
Right. You could also say it's likely, or you probably did this. It's likely you've taken a photograph of something like your food or something like that in the past few days. Lots of people do that. It seems like lots of people need to take about, 40 or 50 pictures every day and post them all on Instagram or Twitter or whatever and hope that you get lots of likes from your posts. But yes, indeed, photography is quite common these days. Perhaps you snapped a photo of a delicious meal, a loved one, a pet, or something to help you remember a special event. Yes, and of course, nowadays we not only take still pictures, but we also take lots of videos, which people like to post online as well. And of course, our smartphones have that capability of filming video, but we're talking specifically about still photography as opposed to video or film photography. And yes, indeed, we're back to the word snap there. Snap is that kind of sound. You can snap your finger, for example, to get someone's attention, or the word snap, as in the title there, is actually serving as a noun. But again, we're also using the word snap here as a verb, so you can snap a photo of lots of different things. Delicious food, a loved one like your family member or your husband or wife or your children. And then, of course, you might take a picture of your cat doing silly things.
That's right. So many people take photos every day of things in their daily lives. Indeed, smartphones have made cameras so portable and commonplace that we now take for granted the ability to quickly and easily document our lives and experiences. So here we have two words. One is portable and the other one is commonplace to describe smartphones. Something that is portable is easy to carry around so that you can use it in different places. And indeed, smartphones are portable because you can hold on to it, put it in your pocket, put it in your bag, carry it around, and use it whenever you want. So I can also refer to a portable stereo as opposed to a stereo that you keep at home because it's large and heavy. And the word commonplace refers to something that is usual, that isn't very special, that happens a lot, or that exists commonly. It's the opposite of unusual or special.
Exactly. So yes, smartphones are all over the place. They are commonplace, and they are so commonplace, they are so portable that we now take for granted the ability to quickly and easily document our lives and to document our experiences. So in the sentence, of course, we've got this so that pattern. They are so commonplace, they are so portable that, as a result, we have the ability to quickly and easily document our lives. In fact, we take it for granted that we have this ability to document our lives. If you take something for granted, you just don't really pay attention to it anymore. You just think it's always there. I don't need to be nice to it. You don't really appreciate it. And there's the old adage, we don't appreciate something until it's gone. But in this particular case, yes, we just kind of take it for granted. If I want to take a picture of my meal at the restaurant, it's real easy. Let me take out the phone and take a picture, and you don't have to pay for processing. You can put it online, and hundreds of people can see it instantly.
Right. So a lot of people use their smartphones to document their lives. When you document something, you're recording it on film or in writing. So many movies are not movies about fictional stories. They are movies about events or people from the past. And these movies are called documentaries. Documentaries are movies that document events in the past or events that happened in the life of a person who's famous.
Right, exactly. And of course, all of us want to document our lives. There are many ways to do this. You can keep a diary, for example, and write about what happened to you today. Or you can take photographs, of course, with your smartphone. Or maybe you can shoot some video. Or maybe you can do some sketches or whatever. Those are different ways to document your life and to document or record your experiences, but it's worth taking a moment to look back on the history of the camera so that we can better appreciate just how amazing this invention is. Indeed, many years ago, I got my start in photography with traditional film cameras. I think my original camera, my first camera, besides the Instamatic cameras, was the Olympus OM1. It was a manual camera, of course. It was mechanical and it used film. And I also learned how to process black and white film. But people don't really do that these days, although people know about those procedures. But it just seems so troublesome to do that when you can take a picture with your smartphone and see it right away. It's probably hard for people to imagine that in the past when you took a picture, you could probably not see it for a couple of days.
That's right. So with those cameras, you really have to be careful about framing your shot before snapping the camera because those film rolls also cost money. Whereas these days, we can take 50, 100 photos and then just cancel the ones that we don't like. So because of this big difference and because of the role of the traditional camera in developing the cameras that we have today, it's worth taking a moment to look back on the history of the camera so that we can better appreciate just how amazing this invention is. So when something is worth something, or it's worth it to do something, you can say that it means there is good reason to do it. So if it's worth taking a moment to look back on the history of the camera, it means that there is good reason to do so. And the reason is that if we look back on the history of the camera, we can better appreciate just how much this invention has affected our lives today. And an invention is a machine or a system that someone has made or designed for the first time.
Exactly. So, of course, if you learn about traditional photography, you can apply some of the ideas to modern photography, and your digital photography will improve, and you'll get more and more likes when you post stuff on Instagram. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the second and final part.
The history of the camera actually predates the introduction of photography by hundreds of years. Some even trace it back to the 4th century BC, when the Chinese philosopher Mozi documented the phenomenon known as the camera obscura effect. This effect occurs when light passes through a small point in a screen, forming an inverted image on the other side. In around AD 1000, an Arab scholar named Ibn al-Haytham wrote in detail about the effect, and by 1550, people were building camera obscura devices to use as drawing aids. Because there was no way to preserve the resulting images, people traced them onto paper.
第二部分我们看到名词 photography 表示摄影业或是照相，像是 Sarah studied photography at university, but now she works as a sales manager. Sarah 在大学时期研读摄影，但她现在的工作是销售经理。又或者是 I enjoy outdoor photography in my free time. 我空闲时喜欢去户外摄影。另外，这个字去掉字尾 y 就会变成动词 photograph， 意思是为点点点拍照。例如 Adrian photographed a couple of old men who were playing chess in the park.Adrian 拍下几名老人在公园下西洋棋的照片。再举一个例子 We're not allowed to photograph anything in the museum. 在博物馆内我们不准拍照。接下来我们看到单字 invert， 它是动词，表示使颠倒或是使导致的意思。在课文中，这个字为过去分词做形容词用，表示导致的或是颠倒的。例如 Phil's computer screen became inverted when he pressed the wrong key.Phil 按错了按键，结果他的电脑画面上下颠倒了。又或者说 Ben inverted his hat to catch the apples Ted tossed to him. Ben 把帽子翻转过来，接 Ted 丢给他的苹果。最后我们看到动词 preserve， 指的是保存、维护、维持或是保持。例如 UNESCO works to preserve World Heritage Sites. 联合国教科文组织致力于保存世界遗址。或者我们可以说 To preserve food, canning is just one of the methods that can be used. 想要保存食物，装罐保存只是其中一种可以使用的方法。
So now we're going to dive into the history of the camera. Now, the history of the camera actually predates the introduction of photography by hundreds of years. So, first of all, the word photography. We're talking about photography actually when we're talking about the camera. Photography refers to the process of taking photos or photographs or the process of taking pictures. I could say, for instance, that I took a course in photography when I was in college so that I could learn to take better pictures. Now, the history of the camera, however, actually predates, meaning it came before. It was invented before the introduction of photography.
Exactly. So they did have cameras way back when, but they didn't actually use film to capture the image. This word photography is a little tricky here because photography is the art and science of taking pictures, but your resulting product is called a photograph with the accent on the first syllable, but in the word photography, the accent is on the second syllable, and a person who does this is a photographer. Again, that would be the accent on the second syllable as well. A photographer takes photographs using photography. So the camera actually predates the introduction of photography by hundreds of years. So basically, we did have the camera before, but we didn't really have photography because there was no way to actually keep the image that the camera was producing. We'll get to that in just a second here. Now, some people, or even some scholars, even trace it back to the 4th century BC, when the Chinese philosopher Mozi documented the phenomenon known as the camera obscura effect. So, yes, we're tracing it back in time. When historians look back in time, we often use this phrase to trace something back to a certain period of time, just to follow a trail back to figure out where something came from. And yes, indeed, we're going way back to the 4th century BC, sometimes referred to as BCE, before the Common Era. And we're talking about a philosopher by the name of Mozi. A philosopher, of course, is somebody who studies the meaning of life and likes wisdom and knowledge. And of course, China is full of old philosophers like Lao Tzu and Mozi and Kongzi. They're all considered philosophers.
Right, so this Chinese philosopher Mozi documented the phenomenon known as the camera obscura effect. Now, this effect occurs when light passes through a small point in a screen, forming an inverted image on the other side. In other words, when light passes through a small point in a screen, so this point is really tiny, it could be as tiny as a pinpoint, and when this happens, it forms an inverted image. So something that is inverted is turned upside down. So the image that is projected through this hole actually comes out upside down inside this box.
Now, in around AD 1000, an Arab scholar named Ibn al-Haytham wrote in detail about the effect, and by 1550, people were building camera obscura devices to use as drawing aids. So the concept has been around for quite some time. They knew about it in ancient China, and also somebody knew about it in the Middle East. And this person in Arabian country wrote about this effect. And because they knew about this concept, they started making these cameras that would invert the image on a screen, and then they would use that image as an aid to help them when they drew things, but they would trace the image. You can do that sometimes as well. If you put a piece of paper over the screen of your computer, maybe you can trace an image that way.
That's right. And a lot of famous painters during that period, during the 16th century, they were able to produce very, very beautiful lifelike portraits and scenes of daily life at the time, and people wondered how were they able to paint so realistically and to get all the details. And later on, somebody thought, well, maybe they were using the camera obscura devices to be able to draw so faithfully. They were using those devices as drawing aids. And even though they were able to trace images using that device, there was no way to preserve the resulting images. When you preserve something, you're preventing it from disappearing or from those things being destroyed. And at the time, there was still no way to prevent those images from going away or from being destroyed.
Yes, indeed. When we use the camera obscura, that image just can't be kept. There's no way to freeze the image. There's no way to preserve the image for posterity. So all you could do is trace those images with a pencil or with a pen or whatever. I'm sure they had great skills and they made great pictures that way, but still, photographs seem to be more like the real thing. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's turn things now over to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分有一个句子写到，智慧型手机让相机变得非常轻便和普遍，以至于我们现在认为能够快速简单的记录我们的生活与经历是理所当然的。好，那文中它是用到 Smartphones have made cameras so portable and commonplace that 智慧型手机让相机变得非常轻便和普遍，以至于好，那这边我们先来复习 so that 的句型。我们用 so 加上形容词或副词，再加 that 子句，是表达非常怎么样，以至于怎么样，或者是如此怎么样，结果怎么样。句型面的 so 是副词，用来强调它后方的形容词或副词所描述的特性，表达程度高到造成某个结果。那么 that 子句就是用来表示结果。举例来说，He was so nervous that he stumbled over his words. 他太紧张了，以至于讲话结结巴巴的。好，那这边要比较一个用法，就是 so that， 它是表达以便好让，意思就相当于 in order that。那么 so that 和 in order that 后面是接表示目的的副词子句，去表达出以便怎么样，如此一来怎么样，或者是这样一来怎么样怎么样。像我们偷偷看到课文下一句，他就写到说 So that we can better appreciate just how amazing this invention is， 好让我们能更好的理解这一项发明是多么的惊人。好，那在口语当中呢 so that 的 that 是可以省略的，像是 John made sure to lock his bicycle so it wouldn't be stolen。 John 确认自己有把脚踏车上锁，这样车子才不会被偷走。好，那刚刚说以至于我们现在认为能够快速简单的记录我们的生活与经历是理所当然的，那这边我们就是要介绍 take 什么什么 for granted， 表示认为是理所当然的。那它的受词可以是人或是事物，当受词是人的话，就表示因为视为理所当然而不把某人当一回事。好，举例来说Never take your family for granted， 绝不要把你的家人视为理所当然哦。另外，当这个片语它的受词比较长的时候，可以把它移到 granted 的后面，写作 take for granted something， 就像课文的用法，它写说 take for granted the ability to 这样子。好，那如果这个 take for granted 它的受词是 that 子句，这时候我们是要用虚受词 it 去代替它的位置，写作 take it for granted 再加 that 子句。举例来说，Don't take it for granted that your family will always be there for you。 别指望家人永远在你身边，别把这件事情视为理所当然咯。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Portable. Frank took a small portable coffee maker with him on his camping trip. Document. The new television special documented the career of the famous athlete. Invention. The printing press was a very important invention for spreading knowledge and information. Photography. Carol really enjoys photography and is hoping to study it in college. Philosopher. With his interest in knowledge and the meaning of life, Todd considered himself a philosopher. Preserve. A protective cover was placed on the old book to help preserve it in good condition.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Helen.
I am Roger.
See you next time.